Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digitally Uploaded podcast. I'm Matt Sainsbury, editor-in-chief of digitallydownloaded.net, and with me this week, we've got a whole bunch of really cool people and Trent.
What?
Hello, Trent.
Hello.
No, Trent's a pretty cool person as well. I just had to do that. Sorry, Trent. Hello, welcome to the podcast.
Yes.
We also have Matt. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
And we have Lee back from last week. He survived and apparently wanted to do it again. So, hello, Lee.
Surprise. How's it going?
Good. So, news for this week. Obviously, January is still a quiet month for news and not too much big stuff is happening. But I'll kick things off and I'll say that there was a pretty cool announcement from Aussie Game Dev that came out this week that City of Brass, which is a particularly good roguelite first-person shooter thingy on PC and PS4, it's coming to Switch as well, which is great because more games on Switch is good thing indeed. I don't think anybody else here on the podcast has actually played it, just me. But it is good, and hopefully everybody else can play it now it's on the Switch because I highly recommend it. What about you, Matt? What's your pick of the news of the week?
Would be that The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3 is finally getting a Western release after however many years of waiting.
Hallelujah.
Which is, I know we've talked about it on the podcast before, very good series of JRPGs, and that I know you and I would both highly recommend. But it is one very long ongoing story spanning 4 games, and until now only 2 of those have been available in English, so
Yes.
we'll be able to play the 3rd one and maybe the 4th one after that.
Fingers crossed. Obviously, you do, because they are direct sequels to one another, you probably should play them in order. Luckily, for people who haven't played the releases on PC, PS3, or PS Vita to date, there's a 2-pack, isn't there, coming with the first 2 coming to PS4, I think next month, is it? Next month? I want to say next month.
So. Is it a 2-pack? I thought they were being released separately.
Oh, weren't they? Anyway, they've both been released. That's the main thing. So you can play them. They're both about 80, 90-hour long RPGs. So, get in early and get across the story. Once you get playing, you'll love it. And, look forward to the sequel.
Yeah.
How many of those are there?
There's 4, 2 of which are Japan only to date, and 2 have been localized into English. So,
That's a lot of content.
It's a lot of stories and stuff. Luckily, it's one of those rare JRPGs where the length of the game is kind of justified. As everybody knows, I tend to whinge when JRPGs are too long and don't deserve to be.
I was about to point to your Kingdom Hearts. Your for Kingdom Hearts, I should say.
Well, the one I always talk about is Persona 5 being about, 50 hours too long, and it is. But these games actually do justify how long they are because they are very epic stories, and they actually don't waste time with content, unnecessarily padding content and stuff. So, put aside the time to play them, but make sure you put aside plenty of time to play them. What about you, Trent? What's your great bit of news for the week?
Well, my great bit of news is just a 5-second spiel on how Bandai Namco's announced, obviously, a new Dragon Ball Z. But the cool part about it is that it's going to be an action RPG, which the last action RPG Bandai Namco announced was Digimon Survive, which was really cool, really exciting, different use of the IP. And so, Dragon Ball Z is a bit stale lately with all the fighters and even past attempts at, diversifying the IP. So maybe they'll put a twist on it like Digimon Survive, and it's going to be great and make people relive the 90s again.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on that. I don't know. I've never to be honest, I've never felt that Bandai Namco's done a great job with anime stuff in general. The Jump Styles games are a great idea that are terribly executed. All the Dragon Ball Z fighting games have done nothing for me. And some of the other smaller anime stuff that Bandai has done has been pretty cheap and nasty. So, you never know, never say never, but I would be surprised if it's as exciting as you're excited, Trent.
Well, I have hope.
You're a much more positive person than me.
What about Soul Calibur?
Oh, that's great. I'm not saying that Bandai Namco's bad. I'm just saying that the anime stuff they do isn't particularly interesting to me anyway. I know there are fans, but yeah, especially Dragon Ball Z. I've never felt that franchise was particularly well handled by Bandai.
I don't know. That's the thing about it, though. They don't have to. They got enough of a fan base where it's like, yeah, and I'll admit I'm among them. You know, I went ahead and bought Xenoverse 1 and 2. I ate it up, even though I know at the end of the day I'm just spamming Kamehameha. Or no, I take that back. I was spamming that whatever Frieza's Death Ball move was, and just maxing out whatever stat did the most damage for that, and that's it. You win.
Yeah. I mean, I know there are fans for it, and obviously it's got such a huge audience. But yeah, I mean, I'd be quite pleased if I'm wrong about that. I'll be the first to admit that I'm wrong, and I love the game and all that. But yeah, I'll wait until we get more details than a single tweet or whatever it was that Bandai let it slip that they're doing it.
It was a single tweet.
A single tweet. There you go. No screenshots, no details tweet yet. So yeah, that's exactly right. We'll probably find out more about it in the next week or two. Then, all right, Lee, and we'll finish things up with you. What's your pick of the news of the week?
Well, in light of fighting games, we got a new Power Rangers fighting game coming out in April. It almost seems like April Fool's joke, but it's apparently, from what I'm reading, it's going to be a little. It's not going to be as complicated as like your standard fighters, which is funny because if you watch the teaser trailer, the combat actually looks pretty standard. Like it looks like the standard insofar as like where in Street Fighter, like if you're in the neutral game, Smash Bros terminology, I guess. But like if a common thing is to like jump in, do an attack, and then do a low attack, go and then block. So it seems like very similar mechanics. But it might be a little easier. It also is being produced by a company that did a mobile fighter, also for Power Rangers. So there's word that it might just be kind of like like their mobile game, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it kind of looked like Mortal Kombat or Injustice. It was inspired by those games. It seems like the attacks have that kind of weight, and it looks like it's structured around that kind of flow as well, which is fine. I like Mortal Kombat. I'm sure Matt will have other opinions about whether games should be like Mortal Kombat, but we've been fighting on the DDNet Slack about Mortal Kombat a bit the last week, listeners, because I like it and Matt doesn't. So, but yeah, if Power Rangers does that, I'll be happy. I mean, all I really want to do is beat up the Green Ranger with the Yellow Ranger. That's really all I want. This is all I want in life. But
green's my favorite color. You can't.
No, green's the worst Ranger. He's the worst. He deserves a beating.
Well, here's what worries me about the way that it's phrased. It sounds to me like it's going to be something like, and you've seen this in other great fighting games before, like a rock, paper, scissors system. Like, you know how in Injustice, is it Injustice, where like you enter the clash and then it's a rock, paper, scissors fight? Is that the same? Am I thinking of the same game? But anyway, that sort of, that doesn't sound like, the direct quote is, "The depth is knowing when to strike, not how." But
that can mean anything. I mean,
yeah, it could mean anything, but it sounds to me like rock, paper, scissors. I don't know.
I mean, that could mean that it's a game that rewards people that play a more defensive game. Like, Dead or Alive is much the same. As long as you're able to perform counters and stuff, you can play a very cagey game, which is good. I like fighting games that are more tactical like that. So that's fine. I'm going to withhold judgment on how it actually plays until I play it, I guess. But yeah, if it's rock, paper, scissors, that's no big deal either. Most fighting games are based on some kind of rock, paper, scissors system.
Oh yeah,
anyway.
I mean, at any point in time in even a Smash game, it's basically rock, paper, scissors. Like if you both attack, you're gonna clash. You grab versus shield is paper versus rock, etc.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's wait and see how it goes. It might turn out to be good. I mean, let's face it probably won't. But again, all I want in life is to beat the living crap out of the Green Ranger. This is
Matt. Why do you not like old IP like from the 80s or 90s? You just so
I love it. I grew up with Power Rangers, mate. I watched it all the time. I loved Power Rangers, except for the Green Ranger.
Did you like Chroma Squad?
I did. It was good fun. But
Yeah,
we might
I like
come back. We might come back and talk about Power Rangers in a future section of the podcast. We got to go to some music now, otherwise we're going to get into a very long digression. We'll listen to some lovely tunes from Hatsune Miku, and we will be back to talk about. Oh, let's talk about Star Wars first this week. 'Welcome back, everybody. So the biggest bit of the news that we didn't talk about in the last section because we wanted to use a whole section of the podcast to talk about it was EA, because EA has done another EA, and they're a very special company, is good old EA. And they've gone and cancelled the big open world Star Wars project that they had in development, I want to say by their Vancouver team, was it?
Yeah, like usual.
Was it their Vancouver team that was doing it, and they canned it?
This is news to me. What game was it?
It was a big open world Star Wars game that they were working on. This was the one that was. It was originally going to be that one that Amy Hennig was working on with the Dead Space team, and they closed that studio down and moved the project over to another one of their teams, and then turned it into open world project, open world Star Wars game. And they've just announced this week that they've canned that. That's not going to happen. Why? Of course, we don't know, because EA doesn't share details about,
And the best part is apparently they're working on another one. It's like, what?
Well, a lot of people they're assuming that the reason that they're doing it is EA couldn't produce this game quickly enough. It would have been a very long development cycle, and EA really needed another Star Wars game out quite soon.
Well, so then they're reusing assets. It's a lot cheaper.
So they've moved the project from that big open world game to something they can produce and release a lot quicker, and people are kind of thinking that it'll be around 2020, perhaps, to go with the next generation of consoles and all that kind of stuff. So that's possibly the business reasons behind it. But it's just interesting. EA obviously picked up the exclusive license for Star Wars across console and PC for a 10-year span, and in that, I think we're into the 7th or 8th year now of that exclusive agreement, and so far they've produced 2 games, both Battlefronts, and neither of them have been very good. So I can only imagine how absolutely pissed off Disney must be right now with the way that their most important franchise has been handled by EA, and it's not good for. It's not a good look for EA either, because I mean, nothing EA does is a good look for EA, but it's there's a lot of very angry Star Wars fans out there.
Well,
right
both
now.
those Battlefront games, they both had major issues, like the loot box scandal, like all that sort of thing. Like that's a huge PR nightmare for them. Like I'm surprised there's no clause in the thing for Disney to just pull the IP. Like they're obviously not managing it the way they used to manage their IP-based games.
Well, the thing is, I don't think Star Wars fans actually want this big AAA blockbuster stuff anyway from their video games. I mean, people have fond memories of what happened with Star Wars under LucasArts beforehand, and LucasArts produced a lot of games. Not a lot of games were of super high quality as such, but they were often, really well loved by Star Wars fans because they fed the fantasy, and they explored different stories within the universe and all of that kind of stuff, which is what people wanted. I don't think EA's done any of that, because of the 2 games that EA's produced, both of them are multiplayer shooters with very limited, sense of lore and world and stuff built around them. So
yeah, and when we were growing up watching Star Wars, right? Who was the main character that you identified with? I mean, in anything, it's the protagonist, but of course it was Luke Skywalker, and that's the Jedi with the sword and the mind powers, and you got us playing as stormtroopers. Whose idea was that? I don't know. I never understood the reasoning behind why they chose that avenue, except for the ease of integrating an FPS and just slapping some Star Wars assets on there. But
I think that was it. I think they had the Battlefield engine and obviously assets and design elements and physics engines and all that kind of stuff, and they just decided, let's just apply this to Star Wars, and people will love it because we can put the Star Wars theme music over the top. But it didn't quite work out that way, and it's been really disappointing. I'm not as big a Star Wars fan of some people, but I did buy a lot of those games back in the day. I really liked what was the Dark Force one, where you played as the
Force Unleashed, I think.
Force Unleashed, yeah, I like those ones. Those were good fun.
The Star Killer.
Yeah, those were good.
I didn't even play them, but I thought it was a cool concept.
And I enjoyed
That's how a Star Wars game should be.
Yeah, exactly. That's how the Star Wars games should be. They're not brilliant games, but they're good fun, and they really work with the universe and add to it rather than just exploit it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very disappointed with the way EA has handled Star Wars, and it's especially disappointing because EA knows how to look after licenses, or at least has in the past. I always talk about how I wish that EA was the one that kept the Lord of the Rings license, because EA did a brilliant job with Lord of the Rings, and Warner Brothers has been a spectacular failure with Lord of the Rings. So yeah, I mean, if you look back at what EA did with Lord of the Rings, it was those action games, which were great, those action RPGs. They also produced the 2 strategy games, which was honestly, some of my favorite strategy games that have ever been produced. And they even made a Final Fantasy X style turn-based RPG, which was a lot of fun as well. So yeah, EA did a really good job with Lord of the Rings. And
but the
I was
problem
hoping that they'd do similar with Star Wars, but they didn't.
Would a modern EA actually do those type of games? Like all those games you like, Matt, they're all from 2006 or 2007, that sort of era. EA is completely different to what it was back then. Even their own, games, things like The Sims, The Sims 2, The Sims 3, The Sims 1, yes, Sims has slowly degraded over time, even the next numbered release, but nothing was as disastrous as The Sims 4 in terms of the base package. And then you've got things like, Sim City, nothing was as disastrous as, yes, the engine was great, arguably, and the game itself was just a mess. And then you've got, you know, their other core franchises, their first-person shooters, that sort of thing. The same thing, you know, they've gone from making, you know, games which people remember to games which are released quickly, horribly, and just not really that fun. So I don't think there is really any major, you know, game publisher which can actually do this anymore, like actually do IP releases, because there's no major publisher which has the resources to sink the time into it, for one, and for two, to actually has actually a good team of developers making good games at the moment.
There is one.
Are you going to say the game? Are you going to say the publisher Matt hates?
No, it's not. This is the publisher Matt loves. I was going to say Koei Tecmo.
Yeah, Koei Tecmo does a brilliant job with licenses, and I joke about it. I joked about it a little bit over the week on Twitter and whatever, that I wish that Koei Tecmo was given the Star Wars license, because who would not want a Star Wars Warriors game? But I'm quite serious. Who would not want a Star Wars Warriors game? That would be absolutely brilliant. And
see, I hate Warriors just because I can never get into the Warriors games when I play them, because I've only played things like, you know, Hyrule Warriors and stuff like that. But even I would be like for a Star Wars one. Like it would suit the IP. Like it.
Oh yeah, it'd be perfect.
Yeah, it'd be absolutely perfect. I mean, if you look at it, Star Wars is all about a big cast of really interesting characters, and everybody has their favorite character and all that kind of stuff. And that always works well with the Warriors franchise, or the Warriors structure, because the Warriors structure is all about, you know, having a lot of characters and picking the ones that you like and going onto battlefields and bopping stuff over their head. So yeah, it would have been great. And pretty sure that Koei actually said at one stage that they would love to have the Star Wars license too. So you never know. Maybe they'll get it.
Like, who doesn't want to play as a Wookiee and like kill some stormtroopers?
Indeed.
Most people don't want to do that.
The good news is, I guess EA, unless they turn things around, they might not get an extension on that 10-year exclusive contract. And that would mean within the next couple of years, the license would be open again. And hopefully Disney would learn its mistake and then not give an exclusive contract or an exclusive license away again, because that's just stupid to do.
Well, it'll be also interesting to see if Disney takes things back in-house again, because they're doing that obviously Disney, with their film side of things.
Disney doesn't have a development business anymore. They got rid of that.
Yeah.
They can rebuild it. They've done that obviously with their, you know, they've got their, you know, TV stuff is all, you know, in their Disney Life or whatever it's called, and like they're moving a lot of stuff in-house in film and TV and stuff in terms of streaming, and they're going to be making those same quality shows which were on Netflix. So why can't they do that games again? Like, yes, they're building, but they've got money.
Building up those kinds of studios is probably not worth their time or energy. I would suspect that what Disney would do would be more along the lines of what it does with Marvel, and share the license around on a case-by-case basis with developers or publishers when they have a good idea, which is the best way to go about things. And I think any license that you can look at, it's always better if there are multiple different takes on it. Another good example is the Warhammer license used to be with THQ exclusively, the old THQ, not THQ Nordic. And then THQ went bust, and that was a great thing for the Warhammer license, because since then, Games Workshop has been able to shop that around, and we've seen a wide range of games. Some are not for me, others are not for other people, but overall, the license is in a much healthier place because there is that variety of experiences out there. And we're seeing that with Marvel, because we've got Koei Tecmo producing a Marvel game, we've got Square Enix producing a Marvel game, we've got the Lego Marvel games, so that's the way to go, I think. And I think Star Wars needs to go that way as well, because EA is a failure. It's an absolute failure. They couldn't even figure out that BioWare should make a Star Wars RPG. I mean, come on.
I mean, yeah, that's
that's
I don't know. Like, I find it hard to rag on him without knowing like all the details, just because, like, I don't know.
We can only judge the output, and the output's not good. That's the point.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's very true.
And it's all EA's fault, because I don't like to rag on EA either, because I did like EA once upon a time. But yeah, some of this stuff, like Trent was mentioning, whatever direction that company's taking at the moment isn't gelling well with me. Let's put it that way.
Well, the funny thing is, everybody's kind of going with that same flow that EA kind of pioneered insofar as like loot boxes and DLC and all that. I mean, they were the first ones to have Sims 4. Was it Sims 4 or 3 or whatever? DLC for DLC. I mean, it's brilliant from a marketing standpoint, I guess, but because you've already got their hook, they've already got their hooks in you. So
only as so long as people enjoy the game. Once they stop enjoying the game, then all that DLC and monetization comes to a catastrophic halt, as they found with that Star Wars game. Because the fundamental reason people that did not like the DLC, the loot boxes, is not because the loot boxes were there. It was because the game was pretty poor. Because you look at Overwatch or any number of other games, people don't have a problem with loot boxes in those games. They only have
Pokemon Go.
Or Pokemon Go. People only have an issue with loot boxes in the games they don't like, and they really did not react well to that Star Wars one. So
yeah. That's the thing. They are going to there's always going to be someone to buy them.
On that note, we'll go to some music. Let's get some music from Star Wars. Let's get that copyright strike going. And we will come back.
Miku Star Wars?
We do get copyright striked a little bit for the Miku stuff when it goes up on the YouTube. We don't get copyright striked for much else, but we're sure it's going to get copyright striked once we do a Star Wars bit of music. But anyway, let's do it. Let's be brave. We'll come back after the break and talk about something a bit different. And welcome back, everybody. Okay, let's talk about Nintendo Switch, because that's a topic we never talk about on digitally downloaded. We don't like the Switch at all, do we, Matt?
Nope.
No, we hate it. Terrible console.
Terrible.
But yeah, this week for people who are subscribers to the wonderful online service that Nintendo provides, especially if you're a Smash fan, that was slight sarcasm. But if you subscribe to that service, you get the free NES games each week or each month. Sorry, and
you mean you get the free online?
You get the free online and the free NES games, free in inverted commas. But yeah, that was updated this week, and you got 2 games, wasn't it? It was like Link 2 and something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, Zelda 2 and Blaster Master was.
That's right. Two very uninspiring games. I might wait till next month to load that app back up again. But anyway, you did get more games, and then the sleuths that love to play around with the back end of the Nintendo Switch also discovered recently that there is code, or there's provision in the code for Super NES games as well. And I think Nintendo did confirm that they were going to bring Super NES games to this service at some stage. But, now we've got kind of firm details that that's going to happen, and that's a pretty exciting thing, because I think we can all agree that if this online service continues to only offer NES games, we're all going to tap out sooner rather than later, especially since you don't get to play Smash anyway, because Smash Online sucks with this service. That's fair to say, isn't it?
Well, Nintendo
That's what I've heard.
It's an online game, and we can all play that.
I'm just not going to say anything on that. Being in America. Sorry, guys. I'm really sorry.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you subscribe to the subscription services of Xbox and PlayStation, you get new games to play. Actually, new as in within the last year, and they have those on a monthly cycle as well. Nintendo idea to do a subscription virtual console is a good idea, but I think it's a little bit ridiculous to just leave it at NES games. So the sooner these Super NES games can come, the better. But looking at that list of Super NES games, which you can find easily enough on the internet if you want, I don't know, nothing on there for me much, really. I mean, I've already got 20 versions of Super Mario Kart. I don't need a 21st.
I think it's so far the list was pretty much the exact same stuff, which is actually on like the mini SNES.
Yeah, minus the JRPGs.
Yeah.
Minus all the games that I actually played on the mini Super NES. There's no Final Fantasy 3 on it. There's no Mother on it, Earthbound, whatever, on it.
There's Breath of Fire 2.
There's Breath of Fire 2, yes. Which is great for people who haven't played Breath of Fire 1. Sorry, what was that?
I was surprised to see Kirby Superstar on there. Nobody's going to buy Kirby Star Allies after that.
It's true.
Unless they keep popping out all this DLC. It's so weird how they're doing that.
But yeah, I mean, are you a subscriber to the online service, Matt? I think you are, aren't you? Yeah.
I am.
How have you found the value of the free NES games each month to be so far? Is it good content?
I've played a lot of Twinbee.
That's a good game, Twinbee.
That's a good game.
Yeah.
And that's about as much. There's a lot of things on there games on there that I like, and then I'm like, I should play that. I'm glad that that's there, and then I never actually do.
That's like my Steam library.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think that because those games are so old, people have nostalgia for them. People have fond memories of playing them at some point of time, but it's a little hard to justify the time to sit there and actually play them now, because let's face it, most NES games are interesting from an archival and historical point of view, but aren't particularly interesting in terms of how they play in this day and age.
Yeah. They haven't aged well, most of them. And even with the things that the NES Online has built in, like to save anywhere and stuff, they're kind of still too clunky to make those games enjoyable now in a way that's for anything other than nostalgia. Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's kind of the reason that it'd be good if the Super NES stuff starts to come, because a lot of those Super NES games people can still enjoy playing today. They're still very playable and enjoyable, and it was kind of the pinnacle, I guess, of the 2D era of video game design. So
when games got good.
Yeah, games were at their best then.
Well, I got to say something about this particular gaffe on Nintendo's part, and I call it a gaffe. I've kind of been sharpening my knife for this one, because if you look back at like Xbox and PlayStation, they had online stores that kicked ass. Like, those games were awesome fun. They had a great arcade. Like, I played, what was it? Magic the Gathering, whichever MTG game was on Xbox, that was like all I played on my 360 for a while. You don't have that with Nintendo, and it's been how long since like they've seen other companies set a better example, and it's so weird. I really think it's a weird contrast for them, just because they tend to be the ones that are setting good examples, especially in today's age. So I don't know. The fact that they had to come up with something. Basically, they had to say, okay, well, we got to jump on board with this online service thing. We got to charge them monthly. It's great revenue. But we actually have to sell them something. Oh shit. We got these files laying around, a bunch of, well, not even a bunch. They're still on this floppy drive. Like, I don't know. The fact that they say, okay, well, you got to buy this to play Super Smash Brothers, assuming that you can actually play it, I still think that's kind of silly too. But the fact that it's also one of the only games that actually has online playability. I mean, okay, yeah, you got Diablo 3, fine, but that could have been hosted on Blizzard servers. But I mean,
well, I mean, we can talk about Smash Brothers at another stage, I think, but because I think a lot of the problems that Smash Brothers is facing are exclusive to Smash Brothers. For some reason, Nintendo's team that looked after that game maybe struggled with the online code or something, because other teams at Nintendo have done a good job with the online. Like Splatoon runs fine on the Switch online. Mario Kart runs fine on the Switch online. Even here in Australia with our internet experience that we get here. So I think a lot of the issues that Smash is facing a kind of a result of Smash rather than Nintendo service. But I think with regards to this whole charging for online thing and then giving people something extra, which is fine, you do need to do that. I think Nintendo's done the right thing going down the virtual console route, because that's where a lot of Nintendo's strongest content is, in a way that Nintendo then doesn't need to go and start paying, third-party developers or publishers to give away their stuff for free. I think this is the right way of going about things.
You nailed it by saying it was an archival and historical. That's the real value. But
exactly, and I think that's the thing. Releasing these games at the rate of 2 per month is a little bit silly. I think what Nintendo should be doing is releasing maybe, across a whole host of different platforms, at least one game per platform per month. So if, for example, if you had like Game Boy Advance, NES, and Super NES on there, and then you release one game for each of those 4 platforms every month, then suddenly that system starts to show a lot of value.
And Soldier Boy is going to beat him to the punch, though.
So yeah, I don't know. I think this online thing that Nintendo's doing is still not good value. I think the Super NES thing that's on the way will help, but I still think there needs to be more stuff done.
The problem is a lot of people are obviously jaded because all this stuff was on the Wii U. Like, it's already been released. But Nintendo's problem is, the reason why, PlayStation and Xbox are so great now is because they've been using basically the same architecture for so long. Like, basically, they're computers now. They're not really drastically different each generation. So Nintendo's got this, we're using this different stuff now. We're doing this. It's completely different to what we are doing for so long. And then they have to figure out how to do all the NES and the, emulation and all that stuff again. And then people are like, well, all these games you're trickling out, and all of these games were on the Wii U. Why can't I get all those games from day one? And so people are really jaded because of that. I definitely think we're probably going to start, now they're working out on SNES stuff. Hopefully we'll start seeing NES stuff a lot quicker. And there's definitely been a few NES games which I really want to play but haven't picked up the app yet because they're newer. Like, I think there was like some sort of like RPG or something I never even heard of. Like, that sort of thing. Like, that's the value which I've seen so far. But yeah, I just think if they were a little bit quicker, maybe people would have been a little bit more adaptive to it.
And it's about the variety of platforms. I really think that the NES by itself isn't enough, because it is such an old console, and it's so, like Matt said, most of the games haven't held up very well at all. It's aged, and it's really only there for people that are really hardcore retro game fans, which is not most people. There's no reason that the Switch can't run N64 and GameCube games. I do not know why Nintendo is not working on these things, because there's a lot of stuff there that they can tap into, and they're just not. And like you said, people got used to having virtual consoles thanks to the Wii U and the 3DS. Look at my 3DS, and I've got about 50 or 60 Game Boy games sitting there. And that's good. That's great. I love my 3DS for that reason. I don't know why the Switch has been so slow with this virtual stuff, this retro stuff.
Strange. Because especially considering how a lot of these, Switch especially has had a lot of Steam games come over And it's the reason why I'm assuming they haven't ported all of these games directly is because of coding. They have the base code. I'm assuming they have the base code, and they're trying to figure out a way to translate it without using emulation, I guess. I know we were kind of joking about the difference between like what is it between emulation and virtual console, but that's probably what it is insofar as what's making it or preventing them from doing more with it. But it's still really strange because the software exists on Windows to do it very easily.
I mean, if I'm being cynical, I'd say it's probably not to do with the coding at all. I reckon it's actually to do with the success of the console, unfortunately, for us. With both the 3DS in its first half of its life and the Wii U, like for the entire existence of the thing, these were not popular consoles. They were not selling well. Developers were not working on those consoles. So Nintendo needed something to release on it to keep people picking up those consoles and playing them. And they kept dipping into the retro with the virtual console to do that. And you notice as the 3DS in the second half of its life, once it really started to pick up and get a lot of games on it, Nintendo pulled right back on the virtual console releases. And at the same time, it kind of stuck with the Wii U right through to the end. So I think it's actually to do with the fact that the Switch is so popular and there's like 70 games released on it every week. And there really was like 70 games released on it this week alone. Nintendo just doesn't see the need to do a virtual console. It doesn't see the value in it, and probably does not want to release games on there that will compete with its third-party people because it wants those third-party games to also be successful. So that's my suspicion of what's probably behind the reason they're dragging their heels a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment as a possibility, but I don't know. I try to be positive with Nintendo. They're one of the few companies entering 2019 that don't have a nasty stain from the prior year.
We all love Nintendo, but we would just wish Nintendo could be better. Yeah. Maybe Apple can acquire them. That would be good.
No, Matt.
On that note,
nothing.
On that little bomb, now Trent's going to yell at me for a bit, but we're going to go to some music. We're going to go back to the archives. Maybe, I know, Final Fantasy 1. We're going to get some music from Final Fantasy 1. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so for the last section of the podcast this week, we don't have Alan around on the podcast, so we can talk about visual novels, because if we try and talk about visual novels when Alan's around, he yells at us. But he's not here, so we can. Excellent. Matt, tell us about this new visual novel that you're playing.
It is called... I have to remember the name. It's got a long title.
It's got a very Japanese visual novel title.
It's called How to Sing to Open Your Heart. And it's basically a very quite simple and straightforward sort of romance game where you play as the princess of this kingdom of basically cat people, and you meet a guy during some sort of like negotiations with a peace talks with a neighboring kingdom that your kingdom used to be at war with, and then you meet this guy who's like a retainer for the other kingdom's king, and he's very
This feels like Ni no Kuni 2, but instead of visual novel. Like, that's exactly how you describe the plot. I'm just like, this is everything which happens in Ni no Kuni.
I was thinking like insert any JRPG here, but you got a guy, there's a girl, there's a king.
Yeah.
And cat people.
There's a bad guy, probably. I don't know.
Oh, he's not a bad guy. He's well, there might be a bad guy. I haven't got
He's
that.
an antagonist.
There's a love interest who's a very kind of basically your typical tsundere kind of. He's very abrupt and quite mean. And then
does the protagonist have a mentor?
No.
Okay. Just seeing if it fit the.
It's the third game in a series that this developer's done, and they're all kind of mostly self-contained, but then they have links, like each game's got a different protagonist and a different love interest, but then characters from previous games show up in small roles. It's very, as visual novels go, it's quite short and very just straightforward. There's one love interest, and either you get together with him or you don't, based on the choices that you make.
It's got decision trees and stuff. It's not it's not that hardcore of a visual novel. That's basically just a read through.
No. And that's
all right.
About as much as I can tell you about it at this stage.
All right, and I guess the one I've been playing finished playing for a review earlier this week and really loved was Bury Me, My Love, which is it's a pretty powerful visual novel, really. It tells the story of a Syrian refugee trying to escape into Europe, but rather than follow her story, you actually play as her husband back in Syria, and the entire game plays out as a series of text messages back and forth, where she's telling you what she's doing, and at points she asks for your advice or what you're thinking, and you can you've got various choices for responses and so on. The narrative plays out based on that interaction, and it's really powerful. It's a story that needs to be told because, like I said in my review, a lot of people need to develop some empathy for the refugees around the world, and this game is certainly aims to humanize them, whereas I guess the popular media commonly tries to demonize them. So the positive strength of video games. It's a bit unfortunate. It's a visual novel, I guess. If it was a first-person shooter, people might actually play it.
Well, I almost picked it up myself after reading the premise, the Syrian refugee, and the fact that you're playing as the gameplay is reading the text messages, and just by like intuition, I can see where that story could develop into something like really tragic or very interesting. And just based on that, I was interested. But like I mentioned during the break, the only visual novel I've ever played is Danganronpa 2, and I gotta admit, after that, I felt like I had given visual novels a not so fair shake up until then, because I really enjoyed it.
You did start out with one of the very best visual novels that's ever been created.
I suppose, and I did. I didn't dip my toes into that. Yeah, I didn't dip my toes into that purchase without like reading the reviews and being like, okay, even if I don't like visual novels, I'll probably like this, right? Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It is one of those ones that's probably not just for people who like visual novels. Whereas the one that Matt was talking about earlier is definitely probably a game for people who like visual novels.
Yeah.
And that's good. The good thing, I guess, the great thing about visual novels is there's just so many of them now. Whereas even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, nobody would think to localize a visual novel on any platform. But
Everything
I
was
guess
actually on the DS.
but I think people discovered that there's an appetite for visual novels out there, and that plus the fact you don't need to release them in boxes on store shelves now. You can do digital distribution has meant that there's been a whole bunch of localization outfits that have popped up, and it's good. Some localization outfits probably need people who are a little bit better equipped with English, I want to say. Matt will know there's a company that's released a fair few of visual novels on the Switch, and to be fair to them, and this is the nicest way I can put it, the English in those visual novels is broken. And you know, when you're talking about a visual novel, I think the text is pretty important, and if you don't get that right, maybe the game's not going to sit so well. But for the most part, I think localization efforts for these things is pretty good, and I'm really happy with the way that there are so many of them coming out, and it's just another kind of experience for people that don't necessarily want to play gamey games all the time.
Yeah, it could be the greatest love story ever told, but if you mess up that grammar, really shatters the whole immersion.
Well, I think localizing a visual novel will be a great experience, because it's not just about, you know, getting the grammar and the translation right. It's about making sure the characters are, you know, tonally different to one another, so that each character has their own personality and isn't just, you know, a collection of words on a screen. That kind of thing is actually really hard to do.
Actually, that reminds me of one other one I've been playing recently, called London Detective Mysteria.
Oh, that looks good. That's the beta, right?
Yeah, it's on Vita. It's coming to PC at some point, but there's no release date for the PC version yet. But that is, it's really good, and just in that way that you made, like a big part of what makes it so good is the localization is just next level.
That's Axis, wasn't it?
No, that was Exceed.
Okay.
And right. It's got the same. The lead of the localization team is the same as the person who led Trails of Cold Steel and Trails of Cold Steel 2.
Oh, is that what's her name?
Brittany something.
Brittany, is it Brittany? Yeah. She's a really good localization.
She's good. She's really talented. And that's that kind of thing where it's just the English script is so well written that every character has their personality, just like flies out of the screen, and you can, even if there were no pictures, you could tell who's talking just from the way they talk.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, and there aren't that many localization outfits that do it that well. Exceed is certainly one. Not that they do many visual novels. Axis is probably the top visual novel localization outfit, I'd have to say. Last year they did Deathmark, is a good example of the kind of quality that they can do. Deathmark, funnily enough, had some weird grammar in it, in the way that they referred to various characters. But the storytelling was just spot on, and was a brilliant piece of localization, I think. The other great ones, probably P-Cube do a good job generally. P-Cube being the guys that localized Steins Gate, and that's a classic. That's one that everybody should play, including people who don't generally play visual novels. Lee and Trent, I'm talking to you too.
You know, I
tried to get into it. I just don't play them anymore. Like, it's weird. Like, I love the genre. It's just like, I don't know, like,
play Steins Gate. It's a good one. Trust me. Although they've got a video version of that coming out, haven't they? Got like a remake which is all like animated and stuff. That might be a better way to go. That's coming out this year. And then the other great localization outfit for visual novels is Idea Factory, of course, with Hakuoki. Not that they localize nearly as many of their games as they probably can. They should, but yeah, when they do it, they do a good job. It'd be nice if something that a lot of people don't know, Koei Tecmo actually has a big visual novel business in Japan, and they just refuse to localize any of them into English.
What?
Yeah, they got a huge visual novel business. Like at TGS every year, probably about a quarter of their stand is dedicated purely to visual novels. What's the name of the group? Ruby Party. Yeah, Ruby Party's the label, and they're very popular apparently, and certainly the art looks great. But because they're otome games, as in I guess games designed principally for women about romancing men, I think that Koei, for whatever reason, hasn't seen a market for that out in the West and has ignored the fact that otome games actually sell pretty well in the West. But anyway.
And yeah, Koei was the basically invented that genre.
That's right.
A game called Angelique in the mid-90s, I think, for Super Nintendo, which is basically that kind of thing. So it's sort of a visual novel, but with an emphasis on your decisions affecting your relationship with the various boys and choosing who you end up falling in love with, which was a result of what's her name? The president of Koei's wife and Keiko.
Oh yes, I can't remember her name. Basically, the most powerful woman in Japanese video games.
Yeah, and she, basically that idea came about because she was one of the most senior people in this game company, and she was like, "Well, why are all these games being made for boys? Why aren't there any games being made that would be interesting for girls to play?" And that was sort of how she came up with that idea, and ended up recruiting pretty much an entirely female development team, most of whom had never made a game or had no experience. And she was like, "Well, we want you want your input on it, so we'll hire you and train you up and teach you how to do it so you can make something." And
yeah, it would. She's great. I saw her speak at Tokyo Game Show one year. It was great. It was this panel of very senior people in the industry, and it was like old Japanese dude for Capcom, old Japanese dude for Square Enix, old Japanese dude for some other company, and it was just like they're all over 60, and there she was by herself, standing out quite significantly, showing that the Japanese industry is still very male driven. But there were a couple of people doing great work, a couple of women doing great work in among that, and certainly she's one. And
Koei,
still going strong.
Yeah, Koei wouldn't exist without her.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely. All right. On that note, we'll wrap up the podcast for this week. We've actually gone over time, so sorry to assail your ears, listeners, for so long. But thanks for tuning in as always. And what music should we finish on? What's a nice bit of music, Matt, from a visual novel? Oh, let's finish with Danganronpa music. That'd be great. Yeah, Danganronpa. We'll finish up with some Danganronpa music. Enjoy the mad brilliance of it, and we will be back next week with plenty more to talk about. Thanks very much.
2. Is all that remains of a once powerful nation. Right now, you're on the threshold of an amazing adventure. Showtime. 1, 2, 1, 2. E is all that remains of a once powerful nation. Right now, you're on the threshold of an amazing adventure. Showtime. 1, 2, 1, 2. E is all that remains of a once powerful nation. Right now, you're on the threshold of an amazing adventure. Showtime.
one.